We've been awaiting your arrival, horseman. Your shadow has long hovered over this realm.
Death takes a holiday in Darksiders II, touring the lands, making pit stops in numerous dungeons, and living up to his murderous moniker by killing nearly everything in sight. Bigger in almost every way than its predecessor, Darksiders II has also cherry-picked some new elements from the gaming pantheon, notably MMO-style loot. Does Death's sojourn breathe life into the classic console adventure, or does it merely stand on the shoulders of giants?
I must restore humanity to redeem war.
Heaven and hell battle upon the shattered earth. All creation trembles, and at the center of it all stands your brother.
He is innocent.
Last time around, the horseman called War got caught up in an apocalypse-inducing conspiracy, playing equal parts stooge and savior. Darksiders II passes the mantle to War's fellow horseman Death, whose mission it is to discover his comrade's fate. Following up on every mystical lead and supernatural clue, Death searches through shattered realms and completes endless errands for word on War's whereabouts.
I must restore humanity to redeem war.
The story can spend hours in hiding as you fetch, kill, and conquer for the scant denizens of this grim world. Be prepared to gather or kill a great many things in sets of 3. When the plot does begin to move, it's often muddled with the cosmology of the Darksiders world, where the names borrowed brazenly from the canon of nerd culture abound, like the Well of Souls and the Lord of Bones. The second half of the game picks up the pace with some familiar faces from the first installment helping to carry the story, which is good since Death is somewhat of a wet blanket, pompous with little wit. Ultimately, Darksiders II tries to get by on its attitude. There are some intriguing points along its bland course, but Death's quest never feels particularly imperative.
And so you have come, bearing your sin like a badge of honor.
Like War's escapades, Death's trials are built from an amalgamation of genres, which ape the top examples in their respective categories. There's the Zelda-like quest, with multiple sprawling overworlds and an abundance of puzzle-filled dungeons. God of War supplies the combo-fueled combat, while Prince of Persia could easily shadow Death's wall runs and ledge grabs.
Perhaps you would be kind enough to feed me.
All these tropes have been expanded upon. Massive side quests contain unique bosses along with a slew of collectibles. Combat features different sub-weapons to master beyond Death's sights, coupled with talent trees and movesets. Even Transversal has been slotted more heavily into the multitude of obulettes and crypts. Demolished stairs and rubble are constantly forcing Death to find another, more acrobatic entry or egress. All of the various systems and styles fit together to comprise one gigantic pastiche of a game, though the lack of originality is forgiven for the tremendous flow. There's always something to keep Death occupied, from massive collectible hunts to a little backtracking to scavenge previously unreachable treasure troves brimming with loot. In the shadow of Diablo, the armor and weapons dropped by enemies and pilfered from chests may seem paltry, but for this type of game, the combinations are pretty vast. At the outset, you'll pop open every chest with relish, and if you have even a smidgen of hoarder in you, you'll scour every corpse you come across long after the allure wears off. But soon enough, every chest will feel like it's spewing forth scads of unremarkable loot, with a marked focus on boring stat increases. Sure, it provides some room to tailor your combat style. Do you want a quick weapon that does less damage or a big slow bruiser, ice damage, or larger critical attack bonuses? But anyone who ever got angry when a chest in Zelda offered up only rupees should prepare themselves for a lot of lackluster loot.
A warrior's life is never easy, old one.
Aye, not easy, but simple.
Being the incarnation of annihilation isn't going to be easy. Puzzles, combat, and gymnastics make up the trinity of the sorts of obstacles Death will encounter, and they play off each other well enough to break up the monotony. When viewed under the microscope, though, it's clear that each element could use a little more fine-tuning. The speed bumps in dungeon crawling are the puzzles. There are a lot of pressure plates, exploding crystals, and locked doors in need of keys. Simply put, you might scratch your head for a moment, though only a handful of puzzles successfully break the mold and offer those satisfying moments of discovery. Dungeon inventory items are few and are used somewhat sparingly, with the most earnest instances of cranial torture reserved for the last leg of the game. Combat, with a multitude of weapons and abilities, has seen the most growth, though it still boils down to a lot of single-button spam, even when you unlock more moves. Dodging attacks and unleashing punishing blows to hordes of enemies gives fights a suitably frantic pace, but even with all the options, it still feels simplistic. Most of the boss fights are an exception to the rule, with attack patterns and puzzle elements that actually engage you, though a few are just damage sponges looking to get spanked. The climbing game is simple enough, feeling very rigid with each jump and leap, and it takes a little while to figure out exactly what Death is allowed to cling to. You'll encounter a whole lot of arbitrary barriers that Death should be able to clear easily, only to find himself scanning impotently for designated grab points. It's quite annoying. Before too long, you get the impression that Darksiders 2 is trying hard to play it safe. All throughout, familiar puzzle pieces are remixed throughout the game's dungeons, and most enemy hordes can be mopped up by tapping one button repeatedly. Don't expect it to push the envelope.
And what glorious end awaits you hiding behind these gates? Pity. I was starting to enjoy the atmosphere.
Then you have not been here long.
Darksiders is consistent with its vision and lavish with detail. Every dungeon is littered with rot and decay, riding its color palette to the brink. The colors may shift, but the darker hues often win out, making dungeons distinctive, but only just a little. Enemies can really flood the screen and have an ample variety of animations, as does Death, with whatever weapon is his current favorite. The soundtrack is a striking high point, with some clever interplay between instruments during battles. We did encounter a few flaws with the sound. Audio will cut out intermittently, which we solved by restarting the game. We also experienced a few hard crashes, which gave us little choice but to restart.
I have to go alone.
I've beaten Death once, and I can do it again.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Death flirts with mediocrity, but he's careful never to linger there too long. Darksiders 2 has more than a few rough edges, but they never fully run away with the experience. With a meaty quest and hours upon hours of optional quality stuff to do and discover, you simply can't beat Death. So you might as well join him.
Judgment is at hand.